Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome to all of our attendees tuning in from around the world. Today's broadcast of Invisible Women in Sport is an Institute and Social Justice production. I am your producer, Garnett Overby III. All guests will be muted during this production, but I encourage you to use the chat feature to ask a question or leave a comment. We will reserve time at the end to answer your questions. So now, without further ado, I would like to welcome today's host, Candace Martin.
Thank you. Welcome to season 2, episode 18 of Invisible Women in Sports. I'm your host, Candace Martin. Today, I'm joined by Natasha Oakes, Associate AD and SWA in North Texas. Thank you so much, Natasha, for joining us today.
Well, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. As I stated, we're going to open up with a little bit of an icebreaker. We are going to play 2 truths and 1 lie. I'll go first, Natasha, just to kind of show you how it goes. And so everyone, you will have 30 seconds to place in the chat which of the statements that I state you believe is a lie. So mine are, my favorite color is blue. I don't like talk radio in the morning. I wanted a pet duck as a child. So now you all have 30 seconds. Clock's ticking. Oh, wow. It's almost unanimous with the radio, huh? Few more seconds. We'll find out. All righty. So the one is not true is that my favorite color is not blue. My favorite color is actually orange. And I do not like talk radio in the morning. I have no clue as to why. I just either prefer music or silence. And I did attempt to take an egg out of my mom's refrigerator as a child, and I set it in the window, the kitchen window. I left the kitchen light on because I wanted to hatch and I wanted a pet duck.
No.
Yes. It took my grandmother coming over and she's like, why is there an egg in the windowsill? And I was like, I'm trying to hatch a duck.
Wow.
I'm trying to hatch a duck with the egg. So that broke my heart. So yes, those are my truths.
Okay. I think I'm pretty boring compared to that.
No,
but,
I'm sure you'll be fine. All right. So I'm gonna throw it to Miss Natasha. So
okay. Wow. Let's see. I am a former student athlete. Growing up, I played the clarinet, and my favorite color is green.
okay, we're having some mixed responses about yours. Deanna says green. Got a few more seconds. All righty, that's 30 seconds. Tell us which one is not true.
The one that is not true, Dixie got it right. I did not play the clarinet. I actually played the violin growing up. So
very nice, very nice. I was not musically blessed. So that was very short-lived for me as far as the music goes. All right, so we're gonna jump right in, and we're here today to just have a simple conversation, just for us to be able to get to know you, learn about you and your journey throughout athletics and your journey to get into athletics. So first, I'd like you to tell me about your start in sports. What did they look like? What was your journey like? We have learned throughout the podcast that no journey is one and the same.
Sure. Yeah. So as I mentioned in our game, I was a former student athlete. I actually participated in track and field. I was a Division II student athlete, and from that had the opportunity to meet some amazing people. Our senior woman administrator, Carmen Leeds, she was really an inspiration to me. And as I was about to graduate, I, like many, was sitting there like, I don't know what I'm gonna do after graduation. And Carmen came and she said, do you have a job set up, or what's your plan? I was like, I don't know, I may continue going to school, I don't know. And she said, fax your resume to this number. I didn't ask any questions. I just did what she told me to do. Little did I know, I was actually applying for an internship at our conference office to work with our commissioner And at the time, like, I didn't know what a conference office was, what their job was, what the commissioner did other than show up at championships with a trophy. So I got a call back, and they were saying, well, the job's yours if you want it. And I said, well, wait a second, like, what did I apply for? And so I went to Kansas City, met with the staff. It was 2 people at the time, and had the opportunity to do a 10-month internship that turned into 6 years of me being at the conference office.
Absolutely. So what experiences did you take away from being at the conference office level? How did those experiences segue into your now full-time role at North Texas? How did that prepare you?
Well, so, at the conference office, it's more corporate than, say, being on a campus, because you don't have the day-to-day interaction with student athletes or with coaches. And so really, it allowed me to see athletics from a higher level, as far as, taking a 30,000 foot view and looking at the conference governance structure, understanding challenges that are faced on different campuses, and every campus is different as far as the challenges that they are faced with. But it was a really good training ground for me to understand how to read legislation, and how to interpret it. So I was the first full-time staff member that they had devoted to compliance. And as a student athlete, I mean, I knew that there were NCAA forms I had to fill out every year, but I didn't know like what a bylaw was or what have you. But before I left the conference office, I was spouting off different bylaws by their numbers and subsets, and had the manual memorized with certain frequent legislation that we would have to refer to. And it really allowed me to understand the bigger picture of college athletics, like still supporting the student athlete experience, but understanding it from a completely different level.
Absolutely. How we talked about yesterday, how you going from being a student athlete and being on campus, the impact that you were able to have at the conference office level. Can you share with us the level of impact you were able to have at the conference office level, and how you were able to provide or impact the team?
Sure. Yeah. So, being a former student athlete and being in a space where we were hosting neutral site championships, we were doing different programming for our student athlete advisory committee, picking gifts and whatnot. I had the opportunity to really kind of speak from my own experience of what student athletes liked. For the longest, we were doing these watches as awards from the conference. And I was like, these student athletes don't wear these watches. Like, like it's nice, but we're not wearing these. But so we had the opportunity to really kind of rethink how we approach certain things, the different events that we had to support the student athlete experience, ways to make it feel, if it was a conference championship, making it feel more like a conference championship from the student athlete perspective. And so, it really just allowed me to share with our staff, from just a completely different perspective, because they were former student athletes that it was, 10, 20 years since they last participated in their sport, or they weren't a student athlete. And so they didn't understand that perspective.
Absolutely. And I laugh because I had a similar journey throughout collegiate athletics. So once I finished undergrad, I was an championship operations intern at the SWAC conference office, which was the conference that I competed volleyball in. And it was just interesting to me, how they looked to me to ask them about, what do student athletes want as championship gifts? And I was like, oh, okay, well, yeah. So the bag thing is a no-go. We don't use up the cups. We can get rid of those because we don't use those. But backpacks and things like that, like we enjoy that. That's what we want. So it was nice to see the level of impact that I was able to have, which I'm sure you can relate to as an intern at the conference office level, because that was coming down the pipeline, and you're seeing student athletes and hearing feedback, and it was like, yeah, that was me. I took care of that.
Yeah.
So, absolutely. So now you're an associate AD, SWA in North Texas. Even prior to you getting there, you were completing your master's program while working a full-time job. So what was that experience like? Because right now, I'm a full-time master's program student, and it's rough within itself. So I can only imagine what it's like trying to juggle both aspects.
Looking back at it, it's something that I don't regret the timing, because I think there's always things to learn from it. Was it hard? Yeah, there were times where I wanted to say, you know what, I don't have time for this. I'm gonna just put this off. I got too much going on over here as far as my work plate. But it was something that was very important to me. Education's been important to me. My mother and my grandmother stressed an importance of education growing up, and it's something that I believe in as an athletics administrator, the power of education. And so while I was at Missouri Western, one of the things that came up in the interview process with at the time, their athletic director, Kurt McGuffin, he's now at UT Martin, he had talked about the importance of me getting my master's. And I was like, yeah, I plan on doing that. I knew that there was a tuition assistance program. And so timing was great to try to do that and save some money in the process. So he's like, I'm gonna give you a year, and then we're going to revisit this conversation if you have not started this program. And he held me accountable. That year wrapped up, and then he's like, okay, it's time to get enrolled. So I definitely, it was hard. I did part-time, so I didn't do a full-time load of 9 hours, but I did 6 hours.
Wow.
And that, it was a lot. It was a lot, but it was a really cool experience for me because going through their sport and fitness management program, Missouri Western is big about applied learning experiences. And so while I was the student, I also had the opportunity to be the teacher in many situations because I was working in the industry.
Right.
And I think it helped to allow my cohort to really kind of understand, especially when we were talking about whether it was facility management or especially in our business law, our sports law class, when we're talking about cases that were of national significance that were NCAA cases, and to be able to provide a perspective, not only from the standpoint of reading and knowing a case, but actually living and understanding the legislation that it is being discussed.
Absolutely.
So great experience. And it made me realize, and people talk about it all the time, you can do hard things. It may not feel like it while you're going through it, but you really can do hard things.
And I think I can speak for all of the DeVos students that are currently now in my cohort. It's hard right now. Mm-hmm. It is, but we try to lean on each other as much as we can. And like you say, just trying to stay the course. So let's talk about now. I want to talk about the grant that you were able to write for the NCAA. So if you could talk a little bit about that, so we can kind of see what your process and your approach was like to prepare for writing a grant.
Right. So the grant that you're talking about, it's the Strategic Alliance Matching Grant Program. That's actually how I got started with my full-time position at the conference office. And it was one of those situations where definitely not a typical path in college athletics. I don't know very many people that really get the chance to write a grant to establish their job as a full-time staff member, but that was the opportunity that was presented to me. I didn't know the first thing about writing a grant. I didn't know what they were looking for. I had no templates, but I had relationships. And so I reached out to a staff member. She's no longer there, but at the time she was the contact for this particular grant program at the NCAA. And I just was like, hey, like, can you help me out? Like, what type of documentation is needed to show? And our commissioner said, if we get this grant, this job is yours. And so it allowed me to be a little more personally invested because, there was a carrot at the end that would benefit me, but also benefit the conference. And so, I think with a little hard work and probably some grace and opportune time, I was able to write a grant and we got it fully funded. It was a 5-year program, of which 3 years of my salary were supplemented by this grant program through the NCAA, including professional development opportunities. And that's really how my job came to be at the conference office. Because like I said, at the time when I started as an intern, they only had 2 full-time people. Right. So the need was there, but the funds weren't there necessarily. But this allowed them the opportunity to get resources to help offset that and have a plan in place to fully integrate it into the budget.
Absolutely. That's amazing. So what advice would you give, like myself and other young professionals who may potentially find themselves soliciting funds or creating and developing positions that may not currently exist?
Mm-hmm. Well, I would say one, being open to asking for help. I think no one knows everything about everything, and so recognizing where your shortcomings may be. If there are opportunities, you need to be educated about what those opportunities are, and don't be afraid to ask for help in creating those opportunities, whether it's at your particular organization or at another opportunity or organization. Like I said, my path is not typical. Like that's not the typical thing to do to be able to establish a full-time job, but I seized the opportunity. Okay. But yeah, I would say definitely thinking about and researching what grant options are out there. Divisions 2 and 3 have similar programs available for, it's all designed about establishing diversity in college athletics. And those programs have been very long-standing. So really it's about researching what's out there and asking the questions and asking for help.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that what I'm getting from what you said is pretty much just being, just no one can read our minds. So just being, your biggest cheerleader and your biggest advocate. So telling people, we talked about it the other day, telling people what you want, what you're looking for.
Absolutely.
But also being willing to do the work, because it took a certain level of work and dedication in writing a grant. I've never personally wrote a grant, but I've heard about the process that goes into preparing and executing grants.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that was where I really benefited, even when I was a student athlete. I knew I wanted to work in sports, but I didn't know how I was going to get in. And so I made sure that I talked to our administrators, our athletic director. They knew that I had a desire in working in sports. I had an opportunity to potentially go work for the Orlando Magic, but I knew I couldn't make that work financially because it was just an internship that was paying like $700 a month. I can't live in Orlando off of $700. But through that, because she knew that I had an interest, our SWA knew that I had interest in college athletics, then that set me up to be able to apply for a job at the conference office. And the same thing when I was there working with the commissioner. He knew that I had a desire to work full time, and I got in there, I did good work, and there was an opportunity for me to write a grant to establish a position, and he allowed me the ability to pursue that because I worked hard. So, it's definitely making sure that those around you know what your dreams, your aspirations are, what your goals are, and then working towards those and being intentional about pursuing the opportunities.
Absolutely. So in the spirit of talking to athletic administration, your associate AD, SWA, Chief Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer now at North Texas, how do you make time to spend face time with your student athletes on campus?
So balancing all of the responsibilities are hard. I see Alicia Oliver is on the call. She's our associate AD for compliance. And she definitely gets on me about working late or staying late in the office. Sometimes I have the tendency to send emails really late at night. But I try to go to practice as much as I can. And she's like this as well. And we've really tried to create a space, especially in the compliance unit, where we are not just going to practice when there's an issue, because compliance people already get a bad rap. Like we're not lurking in the bushes waiting to jump out and be like, "Ha, I gotcha," you know. So I really try to find time between meetings or whatnot. The other day I had meetings like back to back, but I had a 30-minute window where I could take a break, and I went down to football practice just so that I could be present and be on the sidelines and them see me there, to know that, you know, Miss Natasha's here supporting them. So I usually try to make it a point, you know, a couple of times a week to get out and see our kids, because it's important for them to know that I'm here as a support, and that they're not just seeing me when there's issues.
Absolutely, I can agree with that, because as a student athlete, you know, we would have athletic administrators who were so busy and so engulfed in, you know, their day-to-day tasks that oftentimes we wouldn't see them only maybe twice a year at the big athletic meetings, where they would come to a practice and have a conversation with us. And so they would say, you know, my office is always open, my door is always open. Well, we you know, we're thinking, you know, but where's your office again? Oh, okay, that's the one where the door is always shut. Okay, we got you. So it's good to know that you are the type of athletic administrator who actually goes into the spaces where the student athletes are. It's not necessarily the student athletes are always having to seek out you.
Yeah.
So I think that that's definitely great.
Well, and we also have candy, so candy helps. I know candy's not the greatest thing for student athletes to eat all the time. Our nutritionist probably can't stand it, but you know, it's we definitely try to create a space where if they want to come in and talk about the latest sneakers they just copped, or they want to talk about hairstyles or whatever, like, we talk about the most random things, and I love it because, one, I get to talk about something that matters to them and let them know, like, I am fully invested in them as people, not just what they can do on the field of play or in the classroom, but the whole person.
Absolutely. And I know that we talked a little bit about it the other day also. So I wanted to kind of know, I know North Texas joined a new conference today. And I wanted to know, you know, for the people who aren't familiar, what's the day-to-day like for you as an associate AD, as an as SWA, and also as the Chief Diversity and Equity and Inclusion Officer now on campus. So what's the day-to-day like?
Who? No 2 days are alike. So you just never know what you're gonna get. You really don't. Yes, there was late breaking news this morning about us joining a new conference, and we're excited about that. There's actually a press conference going on, I believe, right now. But, you know, I mean, you could have the best laid plans of what you're going to do. I had a plan to review something today in an hour window that I had, and then I had 2 people come in my office that completely derailed that plan. So it's like, okay, this is what we're doing today. And you just, I mean, you have to be flexible. You got to roll with whatever the needs of the day are presented, while also making sure to be diligent about staying on top of any day-to-day work that you may have. I mentioned earlier, you know, there's times where I may send emails late at night, or I may be doing reports or working on some task outside of the hours of, you know, 8 to 5. This is not an 8 to 5 or a 9 to 5 situation. Like, we work long and hard hours, but I mean, that's part of the job. That's part of the profession. And it's what we signed up for. And it's about, you know, it's about work-life integration. Like, work-life balance there is no balance, but work-life integration is what we strive to do, and recognizing that there are ebbs and flows. And so sometimes we're in a time period where the requirement is to invest more of your day to work, where other times we have some downtime and we can kick back and relax or unplug, or at least try to unplug and turn our attention to something else outside of our jobs. But yeah.
Absolutely. So it's so funny that you say it's integration, because I think that's a misbelief when it comes to working. We like to think that there's work-life balance, and you're the second person who has been featured on our podcast who has told us, no, ma'am, that's not the case. That it's actually an integration. You have to find ways to marry the two and just find what works for you.
Mm-hmm.
So tell me about, how do you reset with so many responsibilities, roles, with no 2 days being the same, your positions are continuously growing. You're continuing to oversee multiple things and multiple individuals. So
Mhm.
how do you reset? What does Natasha do in her free time? What does she enjoy doing?
Well, I like to travel. So if I could zoom in, you would see different things on my wall. And it talks about, there's a quote on my wall that talks about collecting adventures, not things.
Mm.
And I really enjoy collecting adventures, whether it's going to the hot air balloon fiesta out in Albuquerque. And I know Garnett told me I need to go to the one in Reno. So definitely, or Garrett, excuse me, told me to go to the one in Reno. And I'm going to definitely do that. But I love to travel. I've tried to knock off about I'm trying to do the 50 states, and I think I have like 13 left. So I've got to get that whole northeastern corridor and a couple of states in like the northern Midwest, so like Wyoming and Montana, and I got to get Idaho, but yeah, and I have to get Alaska. But definitely love to travel. And then love food, so I like to go and try different foods. Alicia and I have a cup that we each have a cup in our office with like different places that we want to try in the area. And so it's like, where you want to go to lunch today? I don't know, let's go to the cup. And then we'll shake the cup up, pull out an option. So and then there's times where I just like doing nothing. Like there is value in just the nothing. And I did that this past weekend. We had a game on Friday night, and so it was one of the rare Saturday, Sundays that were open for me, and I did nothing, and it was great.
Absolutely. I think sometimes, in the hustle and bustle of grad school and all of us having other internship and part-time jobs going on, sometimes it's nice just to do. What did you do this weekend? Oh, I did nothing. I can't even remember.
Not
I
a darn
rolled
thing.
from one side of the bed to the other. All righty. So now I kind of want to tap into your role as the Chief Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer now at North Texas. So I wanted to know, as it pertains to Title IX, what kind of changes do you see resulting of that, whether it be across the NCAA, whether it be on your own campus at North Texas?
Well, right now we're at an interesting moment in our profession. And as an association, we have the gender equity review that's been going on that really started from everything that went on at the men's and women's basketball championships. And I think that because there's a greater attention being paid, the need's always been there.
Right.
Like, I don't think anyone can deny that the need has always been there, but now there is more visibility to any discrepancies that may be occurring. And so I think that as a result of what's going on the national landscape, that puts the onus on all of us as member institutions to ensure that we are also taking a microscope and looking at what we're doing on our individual campuses. So, we've done things from looking at how we do budget allocations and what our travel looks like from one team to the next, and making sure that the amount of gear that we're being provided from our different programs is equitable, to make sure that we're doing our due diligence. And if there are areas where we need to improve upon, to make plans to be intentional about improving on those areas. Because ultimately, our goal is to provide a quality experience to all of our student athletes. Right. And that's within whatever means and resources we have available, and making sure that that is equitable across the board.
Absolutely.
So I would say changes is really just a heightened sense of, we need to make sure that we're doing our due diligence. I don't know that there's going to be any changes to, say, legislation, if you will, but I think there's going to be a greater emphasis on making sure that we are supporting and really operating in line with the intent behind that legislation.
Absolutely. And also you mentioned how you all encourage your student athletes to be a part of other organizations on campus. And I know as a student athlete, once my 4.5 years were up, I could not think of many organizations that I took advantage of or was a part of on campus, or even that my athletic administration introduced me to. So I kind of want to hear about your initiative or motivation for wanting to introduce or encourage your student athletes to engage in other campus organizations.
Sure. Yeah. Being a college student athlete, it's easy to find yourself in a bubble. We've got academic advisors in athletics, we have nutritionists, we have athletic trainers and whatnot. So everything that they need really to be successful either in the classroom or in the field of play is offered through athletics. But there are some areas where we've looked at strategically partnering with units across campus. For example, with our mental health initiative, we partner with units across campus, and our university just recently went through a process of establishing a new program that's really designed to support students of color from a mental health standpoint. And so we've been in conversations with that director to make sure that our student athletes know that exists. We try to share whenever there's programming going on campus, we try to share that with our student athletes, either through our student athlete advisory committee, or, if it's retweeting on social media, what efforts campus is doing to celebrate certain things or offer certain resources. We definitely want to make sure that our students are aware of that, because there is definitely a benefit of being an active community member of the greater campus as a whole versus just staying in the athletics bubble.
And I think that's especially important considering the last couple of years, the things that we have seen as a country.
Mm-hmm.
I think the fact that North Texas has gone above and beyond to establish the focus on African-American students and their mental health, because it can be a little different. A lot of things hit home as it pertains to African-American students, and many of the things that we saw that were televised over the last couple of years. Mm-hmm. Are there any initiatives that you are overseeing currently at North Texas as it pertains to diversity, equity, and inclusion?
Well, so one of the things that we did, when you think back to summer 2020 and everything that was going on, a lot of schools put different statements out, what have you. We took a step back and said, okay, we need to listen. And so we did go through a listening tour where we were meeting with our different our sport programs to hear from our student athletes. And, with it being a time where a lot of people were really trying to grapple with how they felt, it was an opportunity to share personal experience. It was an opportunity to sit and listen. And some meetings, it was just being quiet and letting them know, like, we get it. It's a lot. It's a lot to take in. It's a lot to process. But please know that we are here for you. We did establish a Unity platform where on our website, we have a space dedicated to amplifying the voices of our student athletes. So we have videos that where we've heard from them in their words about different topics that are important to them. We've had space for them to provide written statements, whether that's talking about why Black History Month is important to them. For Hispanic heritage, we did a video on some of our students. And so we're really trying to find ways to showcase that our student athletes are more than athletes. There's so many different facets to them, whether it's what they're studying in school or the family that they come from, or what their hobbies are, or, just letting our fans understand and see that it's more than just what they're doing on the field or on the court.
Right. They're more than, an athlete, and more than a number. Absolutely. So as a Black woman in the industry, were there any challenges you faced or are currently facing, and how did you overcome those challenges?
Yeah, there's been some challenges. Sometimes, it's left me wondering, like, was this because I'm Black, because I'm a woman, because I'm young at the time, or like, what was it? All the above, who knows? But yeah, there were challenges that I faced. Whether it was, people speaking disparagingly to me or calling me racial slurs or whatnot. But for me, um, I felt like, well, I must be doing something right. If they're coming at me in this manner, then I must be doing something right, because they feel uncomfortable. And I had to keep in mind, like, what is my ultimate goal? Why am I doing this? Because it's bigger than me. And I tell people all the time when they talk about wanting to work in college athletics, if you don't have a passion to work in this industry, you're not going to be happy. Like, it's not, I'm working in college athletics because I think it's cool. Like, because that'll burn out real quick. You're going to get tired. These jobs are not glamorous all the time. Sometimes we take a beating either because people don't agree with the actions or decisions that we've made, or our team is having a bad season and now we are terrible as administrators. Who knows? But, if you keep in mind why you're doing what you're doing and really hold tight to that, like, as I mentioned earlier, you can do tough things. You can get through these things if you stay focused. Now, that may require you to do the tough thing in speaking up and saying and reporting, hey, this person said this to me, or this person did that. But yeah, I mean, I think women, because it's a male dominated industry, there's challenges that we face as women, but then there's also the intersectionality between the fact that I'm a woman and I'm also a woman of color. And so then there's challenges that I may face as a result of that, but I don't allow that to discourage me from continuing on the path that I've set on.
Absolutely. So a matter of knowing our why and establishing our why.
Yep.
And utilizing that to drive us every day, even when we will face bumps in the road, but just going back to the foundation and working our way through it.
Absolutely.
Thank you. So coming up on my last question, everyone, I would like to remind you all to drop your questions in the chat for Miss Natasha. So when we move over to that portion, which is going to be led by Garnett for us today. So please do that. All right, Natasha. So last question that I have, I'm a current first year DeVos graduate student. Olivia Wiggins is graduating in 2 months. Lucky her. And she, we're entering the industry. We're preparing for, take on those internships, full-time positions. We're seeking these things out. Is there any advice you could give us as up and coming professionals? Anything that we can utilize now or in the future that will kind of help us along the way? Any kind of nuggets you got?
Sure. Well, one, I would recognize that you all are in a very reputable program, and I would strongly encourage you to make connections with your faculty, because you never know how those connections may serve you in the future. I would also be sure to pay attention to your cohorts. Those members, you don't know where they're going to be, how they may be able to be an advocate for you for a potential opportunity down the road. So, we are responsible for our own success. And that doesn't mean that we're not going to experience challenges along the way, but making sure that you go in, do good work, and establish quality relationships, and not just I'm talking to you because I hope that you're going to be able to do something for me later, but like being personally invested in having a relationship with people, I think is going to carry a long way. As I look back over the course of my career, and it's hard to believe I've been in this profession for over 17 years. But as I think about it, the common themes were I went in, I did good work, and I had amazing relationships with the people that I worked with and the people that I served. And as a result of that, people have been speaking my name in rooms that I've never entered. And so, I would just strongly encourage everyone as they're progressing through their career, regardless of where they're at in their career, whether it's you first getting started or someone who is well seasoned, making sure that you continue to do good work, remember your why, and it's all about relationships.
Absolutely. So being intentional.
Absolutely.
Being intentional.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much, Natasha. I'm going to throw it over to Garnett for our Q&A.
Tasha, thank you so much. That was amazing. I'm sitting here writing down all kind of notes. You gave me so many nuggets.
Well, thank you. And I apologize. I said Garrett, Garnett. I was like, I knew it was something.
You got it right on Tuesday, and then you got it right the first time, and then I don't know what happened. It fell apart in there, but it came back together, so we're good. Wonderful. You know, and I'm gonna have to get one of those restaurant cups that you and Alicia have, because I like to eat too, and sometimes I can't figure out where to go. So that's a great idea. But we do have a few questions for you. Our very first question comes from one of our very own GAs, Iyane Miranda. She asks, what do you enjoy most about your career?
You know, I enjoy seeing our students come in and watching the growth process. A lot of our students are first generation, and I was a first generation college graduate for my family. And to see our students come in and really grow as young people, and not just about their success athletically, like seeing them come in and excel academically, overcome challenges, and really grow into young people that can go on and be positive contributors to society. That's why I got into this. And so I love interacting with our student athletes. You know, sometimes it's just the boost that I need if I am sitting at my desk all day on Zoom meetings or working on reports. You know, the non-glamorous piece of it, I really enjoy interacting with our student athletes.
Awesome. We have from another one of our graduate assistants, Maya King. She has, it's a two-part question. The first part is how do you think your journey working in sports have helped grow or stretch you as a person? And the second part is what was your favorite place you've traveled to?
Okay. Well, I would say as far as my journey working in sports, it's very similar to all the things that we say are the benefits for student athletes being participants in student athletes. So we talk about the ability to develop time management skills and the ability to overcome adversity. You know, we as administrators have to do that as well. We have to be able to manage our time wisely. We have to be able to multitask and perform very many projects and responsibilities all at the same time. And it really, if you think about what it is to traverse through life, college athletics teaches people how to manage life. And so as I've gone through my career, are there things where I've made mistakes? Absolutely. And it allowed me the training ground to really learn from them and be a better person, be a better professional, be a better administrator. I would say as far as my favorite place that I've traveled to, so one year, let's see, it would have been the last Olympic trials, so 2016, I believe. I went out to Oregon and I did a trip by myself. Normally I travel, I go with girlfriends or whatnot. This trip was a solo trip out to Oregon. I went to the Olympic trials and I drove out to the coast and took a trip to the Sea Lion Caves. And so it's in Florence, and it was cold because the wind was blowing. You know, you got that northern wind up there on the coast, but I took this elevator down into the Sea Lion Caves, and it was just like so off the beaten path for me. But I loved it because it was just so different. Like, it wasn't going to the beach. Not that there's anything wrong with the beach, but sometimes I just crave something different. And it was one of my favorite trips of all time.
That sounds great. Like between your restaurant cup and all of your adventures, I need to like hang out with you sometime, Natasha. So, because you find a bunch of great stuff to get into. That is awesome. And I recall being a student athlete, some of those skill sets that you just learned from being a student athlete. I reach back to those days all the time and just pull, from that toolbox of different skills that I learned during that time in my life. So that's awesome. That's great. This question comes from Alexis Guess. Alexis, thank you for your question. And Alexis is asking, can you please talk about the importance of mentorship and how to lift as you rise?
Well, thank you, Alexis. Alexis is at the University of North Texas. I personally know her, and I appreciate that question. I wouldn't be where I am today without mentorship. And so I think it's definitely not only an expectation, but really it's my responsibility to do the same. And so whether it's mentoring people that work directly with me, or in our department, I've tried to be an example and lead by example, but also taking opportunities where I can to pour into our staff, whether it's providing access to professional development opportunities. So Alexis had the opportunity to do some things through MOA and do a Women Leaders scholarship program. One of the things that I did, as far as going back to Candace's earlier question about initiatives, we allowed an opportunity for all of our women administrators in our department to be members of Women Leaders, which wasn't the case before I got into my role. And so, really using my influence, my power that I may have, to really put people in a position to have access to other programs. Same thing with our administrators of color. They have the opportunity to be a part of MOA. And so I've tried to find any way that I possibly can to either mentor people directly one-on-one or provide them with opportunities to develop and grow professionally. I have mentees through different programs. Excuse me, right now I'm a mentor through the Black Sports Professionals. We have a Dallas chapter, and so I have a mentee through that program. There's formal mentorships that I'm involved in as well as informal, but it's definitely something that I've really tried throughout my career to lift and magnify other people, because I recognize that we don't get to one place by ourselves. There are other people that are championing opportunities for us. So.
Wonderful. Well, Natasha, thank you so much for participating in Invisible Women in Sport today. Thank you for the courage that it takes to be a woman of color in this industry. And we really appreciate you sharing your journey with us today. So I'm going to turn it back over to Candace at this time.
Thank you, Garnett. And I'm pulling up a comment for the chat from Dixie. She stated that when I began athletics, Natasha was in her role at the conference and was a great mentor to me. Appreciate the role she played in my first few years in my job. She's a gem.
Oh, thanks, Dixie.
So I think that echoes what we already knew about you and what we already believe to be true. So once again, Natasha, I'd like to say thank you. Thank you for joining us on today's podcast.
All right, thank you.
All right, special thanks to all the organizations that registered. Tune in November 11th at 2 p.m. for episode 19. We have a treat in store for you all. We will be speaking with USA Basketball's Jennifer L. Williams on November 11th.
And she's amazing. I'm a plugger. She is awesome. I would definitely not miss that session.
Please follow us on all social media platforms to stay up to date and informed on future programs at Institute SSJ. If ever missed an episode, we've got you covered on our YouTube. We have all of our episodes posted and up to date. We thank you all for your support of Invisible Women in Sport. We're a nonprofit organization with other programs that impact various social injustice issues. Please use the QR code to support us with a financial gift as we continue to change lives through the power of sport. Thank you. I'm your host, Candace Martin. Special thanks to our guest, Natasha Oakes, producer, Garnett L. Overby III, Matt Edelson, graduate assistants, Larissa Campello, Maya King, Taylor Middleton, Iyane Miranda, and Olivia Wiggins. Special thank you to all of our sponsors. And once again, please follow us on all social media platforms to stay up to date and informed on future programs at Institute SSJ. If you ever miss an episode, you can find those episodes on YouTube. Viewers, we need your feedback to make Invisible Women in Sport the best it can be. Following today's episode, you will receive a short survey. Please complete it and submit it to us. Also, we have a lot of inquiries about if we have connections to internships. If any of our supporters or members have internships available, please send your information to our producer, Garnett Overby, at goverby@sportandsocialjustice.org. So we can send it out to people reaching out to us. Once again, tune in November 11th at 2 p.m. where we will be speaking with USA Basketball's Jennifer L. Williams. I'm your host, Candace Martin, for Invisible Women in Sport Zoomcast. See us now. Thank you all again. See you all November 11th.